Well, I mean, we appreciate, the mayors do appreciate at least some of the effort that goes in on Beacon Hill. We're not very satisfied with the result, and I know that the Senate, I believe in the last session,
yes, it was.
Stan Rosenberg came up with what was called a compromise. And in fact, the MMA, I looked at it and I felt that the disease there just was not it was not, the cure was worse than the disease.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know how familiar you are with Rosenberg's proposal, but it was that compromise that ended up being attacked by all sides.
Everybody, yes. And then it had an arbitration piece at the end, and we all know where that leads. So, which is never good for the taxpayer. So let's just conclude that. So I don't know. I know that the governor will, I think, come out with some proposal. I'd like to think it would be. I'm hopeful that in the end we're able to get some progress, but I am concerned that that it may not be anything close to what it needs to be, given the urgency of this issue. And I know it's a political issue. Obviously, the union is fighting it hard. But the future of the basic services that you provide for the citizens of Methuen or any other community is what's at stake here. Schools and police and fire. You can only spend $1 once,
right.
It turns out. So that's what's at stake here.
Beacon Hill, I think they believe sometimes you can spend it 2 and 3 times.
Right, and the day of reckoning may not come until after we're long gone.
That is correct. Unfortunately, that is correct.
And it's probably true.
Yes, yeah. In many cases, it has been. I think the rubber is meeting the road now. The unions. Let's talk about the unions,
sure.
Because I've butted heads with my local unions, but I still have good relationship with them. But on health care, they seem immunized to, and I say this with all due respect to the unions, they seem immunized to the fact that any savings there, in localities these days, the savings are going to be plowed back into services and jobs for their own members.
Precisely. And so the average person said, wait a minute, I want to understand, their members are going to be, their jobs are going to be saved if we do this. But they're opposed to it.
Yes.
That is a curiosity. Now, the answer, of course, is they don't want to give up the collective bargaining rights to bargain on health care. And I understand that's something that, but it's a law. They haven't earned it through some
that's correct.
A higher power here. It's a state law that gives them this opportunity. And so here we are in this desperate situation. The proposal still guarantees a very good health plan, but allows savings of jobs for their members, and then they oppose it. It doesn't put them in a very good position from a moral or practical or philosophical point of view, but they are relentless in ignoring the consequences, in my view, in ignoring the consequences of their position.
Right. And that is unfortunately very true. Let me just relate one quick Methuen story to you. We are self-insured in Methuen, and about halfway through the year in the last fiscal cycle, we saw that our utilization for unusually high and over our benchmark.
Right.
And so as we went back to our coalition bargaining unit and told them, they said, well, we're not really willing to do anything. And as we closed the year, we ended up with a $2 million plus deficit. Actually, with the IBNR number, it was over $3 million. So we looked at that, and now we're trying to recover from that. But if we had the ability to make the design changes, not only would it have helped Methuen, but it would have helped them as well, because they're on the hook for their percentage of the deficit.
I mean, which points out, I mean, perfect story, and it points out as well, I mean, not only that their jobs are at stake, but also how much they're paying. In other words, if these are costly plans, which they are, then their portion is more costly for the employees as well. So there's savings that they can accrue through plan design. So
no question about it.
So the story is a good illustration of the problem.
A common story. Let's, as much as I hate to get off municipal health care plan design, let's talk about pensions. I know another issue that you've been on top of for many years. Last year, some so-called pension reform, I think, sort of got to the some of the more flagrant abuses.
Flagrant abuses, yes.
But not real substantive in terms of financial savings.
Right.
This year, I happen to see the governor flanked by the treasurer, by the speaker, by the Senate president, talking about reforms that he talks in the neighborhood of saving $5 billion over time. It appeared to me to be more substance. What was your take on it?
I agree with that, and we were been complimentary of the governor for putting this forward. You're correct. I mean, the previous changes were really just closed abuses that should never have been there, and shocked the public when they came to light in the first place and embarrassed the politicians, so they closed those loopholes. Now, what the governor's proposing is substantive reform. It's overdue, but I commend him for doing that, and the speaker and the Senate president, treasurer-elect. So I think we might see something done on pension reform this year, which is necessary because we have a large unfunded obligation for the state and most municipal pensions. And these changes would affect municipal employees as well as state employees and of course, retirees. I think the problem is that savings is large over time, but most of the savings is in the years out because the proposals are for new hires. So for new hires, you would retire at 67 instead of 65.
Right.
But that is in 2053, let's say, or something. Right. So the savings are long-term. Healthcare, the savings are larger and immediate.
Yes.
So we need to do reforms of both healthcare and pension benefits for public employees and retirees. They need to come together, but one has immediate savings, the other, the pensions, longer-term savings.
Well, we only have a minute left, but let me give you one last question to put you on the spot. I know that coupled with the announced reforms, the governor also talked about extending the pension schedule and averting a $1 billion increase in this next budget cycle. A good idea, bad idea, or both?
Well, probably both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a necessary idea because we're already going to see cuts in local aid and impact local schools and public safety. If we had another $1 billion hole by not extending the period, this would even have more dramatic results on local services. So it's probably a necessity. If we're going to do this, however, and we are presumably going to do it, the state legislature and the governor, then we have to have reform with it. It would be an utter outrage to just extend the period without the reforms. The problem is these reforms are good, but they're not going to be sufficient to address the long-term obligations in the pension area, retiree health care, and so forth. This is a saga that will go on for many years, and it's important to try to get ahead of it in Massachusetts because we're seeing other states that are in much worse shape. Illinois and New Jersey, but that's the future because municipalities, the state, cannot afford the generous pension benefits that have been provided for the last 50 years. It's not a moral issue. It's not saying we need to do away with those. It simply says we have to tailor them to meet the fiscal realities of the next few decades.
Yes. Well, listen, we could talk about this for another 2 hours. There's a lot to it. I hope to have you back at some point. I appreciate you taking the time to come to Methuen. It's been great to talk to you.
Likewise, and congratulations on the job you're doing here.
Thank you very much. This is Michael Widmer from the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation. You can find him on the internet. You want to know about numbers in the state budget and local health care, this is the guy you want to talk to. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.